Hey, Paul, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hi, Carly. Doing well. Appreciate being here.
Thank you so much. So, you've been a member of our Teach Music Online membership for a little while. And as soon as you joined, we learned all about this amazing program and software that you are building, that you've built for yourself and for teachers everywhere. So, I'm excited to talk all about it. Can you tell us a kind of a
Sure.
summary of what you've created in a few sentences for those listening who haven't heard yet of Music Nest?
Yeah. Music Nest is a software that is designed to maximize our efforts to share notes, different media files as quickly as possible during the session, so that we're not interrupted. We don't want to interrupt the magic of the lesson flow, and certainly online, that's all the more important. That's a very, very brief nutshell of what the app is about.
When you've been building this, what were some of the problems you wanted to solve for teachers?
Well, we started this. Dave Nespoli is my partner in crime in this. Um, it, when we started it, it was before the pandemic, so there wasn't like, we weren't looking for some new market or anything like that. It was just about seeing the problem that um, that I faced, other music teachers faced, that was really about all the resources that we have to share, all the little notes, like little nuances, individualized types of information that we wanted to share with students, so that during home practice they would have the best outcomes. Like there was nothing great out there that could do that in a way that didn't feel distracting or clunky, or just too much all about itself, that it wasn't serving the purpose. So
Mm.
that was a problem.
Yeah, and it's neat that you started that before the pandemic without realizing how necessary it would be for teachers being online to be able to convey information, via the web because we wouldn't even see students in person. What point was the
Hmm.
was your what was the product at when the pandemic hit? Was it something you were able to use?
Oh, I mean, it was, I forgive me because the terminology escapes me, but it wasn't. I wouldn't even say it was beta stage. I was using I was using it personally for my studio, and that's how we were testing it. We had I had a couple friends that were really interested in what we were doing, and so they were using it. But it wasn't. We were still very much in the beginning stages when that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine building something like that it doesn't happen in a week or a month or even in a year. It takes so much time
Right, right.
to
Yeah,
design
needing
it and
feedback.
test it. And yeah, getting feedback, gosh, takes so much time. So you guys have been doing it now for, is it 3 years, about 3.5 years?
Gosh, well, I guess, I'm thinking, yeah, like I said, I mean, the history, if you go back, push back through before 2020, everything seems hazy. You know what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
I think it was 2019. And so I guess we're probably going on, three and a half, 4 years, something like
Okay.
that. And yeah, trucking along, it's, it's a passion for both of us, you know.
Yeah.
My partner Dave is the software guy, and he did really well for himself as a software development consultant, and for big corporations and things
Hmm.
like that. But he wanted to do something that was really just felt a little more purposeful, to
Right.
him, and so it's been a passion for both of us, and that's how you make it the long haul, I think.
Right. Tell us about when you had to transition online as a teacher. How did that go for
Mhm.
you? Was it your first time being online with your students in, I guess, March of 2020?
Oh gosh.
Almost three
I
years
think back to
ago.
that. I had this is so silly, but this the school district. So I was working in Anchorage, Alaska at the time, in person, and I had only just barely dabbled. I mean, I think I had
Mm.
used Skype, or FaceTime. It was really super low tech. I didn't have any of my overhead cameras, which are super, or the lighting or any of that kind of stuff. Um, but I was just really fortunate because I always was the guy who knew technology. Like of all my music teaching friends, I always ask me the questions and stuff. So I kind of nerded out on all the equipment and like just thinking about the modality, like how do I connect with my student now that we're looking at a screen and stuff. But I didn't have much experience. It was literally there was what they called the spring break. I had built a bunch of cool new stuff in my studio, like like brought in some nice fancy furniture, and then, bam, we all went online. And I have not, um, aside from a couple of exceptions, I haven't taught, very few exceptions. I haven't taught in person since. It's been all online.
Wow.
I pivoted the entire studio, and I've been really fortunate, super fortunate that my students have in large part stuck with it and actually really appreciated and enjoyed learning with me as we've gone along.
Oh, good for you. Some teachers couldn't wait to go back to in person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you felt like you were able to be as effective online? Were there some tweaks you made to feel like you were still able to convey, your methods?
Yeah. There were trade offs. Uh, I'm a Suzuki method teacher, which, uh, that brings up different things to different people. But, a lot of folks, particularly, colleagues in the method, were very much turned off by the use of technology. And I don't want to generalize, but, most of us were really wanting to get back into in person teaching. And so I'm really an outlier in that regard because I thought, this is there's lots of things we can do here, but I think the big loss is the kinesthetic connection. Like for my kinesthetic learners, I used to go like just do little things like tap on a finger, lightly, or you can't do that. But I found, and this is just an audio, right? This isn't going to be a video recording as well, is it?
It is a video
Uh,
recording,
oh,
so you
okay.
can show us
Yeah, I was
if
going to
you'd
show you.
like.
So I found that, and I've been wanting to do this for years, and I moved my microphone out of the way here. I found that I could do things, I could visually present
Wow.
things in a way that was much more convenient and easy for my students. You can see all my fingers, all the strings, and all that stuff. And there was some OBS wizardry that had to happen to make this happen. But now, I still have a lot of students in Anchorage, Alaska, so I visit quarterly for an in-person lesson and recital, which is great because I get
Wow.
to go back up and go
Quarterly.
fishing,
Wow.
or yeah, it's a big lift, but I do like going back, so that helps. And so I'll go there, and like my students, I'm so used to teaching visually now, but then they don't have the overhead camera anymore, and so I'll notice like, oh, this is a lot harder to teach. I have to like change. So some of it's just about understanding my students'
Right.
teaching or educational um, needs, and then just adjusting my whole outlook as well.
That top-down view that's kind of flipped is so neat because, as I'm looking down at my hands, I'm just looking at what you just showed me and you just can create that immediately versus if you're sitting in front of a teacher and having to kind of, like that seems
Right.
really, really effective.
Yeah, I found it's like my students have really gotten used to it and they like it, for the most part. So yeah, I've been really grateful to have something to
Yeah.
to teach them with.
I think teachers listening and watching should be always looking for creative ways to make that connection with the student or the way we communicate a little bit
Hmm.
easier. And the top down camera, for anyone that hasn't tried them yet, I mean, no matter what instrument you teach, having a different angle can be so effective. For piano,
Hmm.
it's the top down at the fingers. I talked to Sebastian yesterday, who's in our membership. He's a guitar teacher, and
Yeah.
he just added I don't even know how he did it, but it's a MIDI lights for his
Hmm.
piano. So
Hmm.
you can see as he's playing scales, there's lights that follow his fingers up the piano and back down, just as like
Right.
another step of where are his hands on the piano. It's really neat what you can do.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I've even with instructional videos, I've thought, there's I want to find a software that can identify where my fingers are and color code them, those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. Just again, we can't, like, the kinesthetic connection can't be there unless I have a parent, like, that's going to
Mm-hmm.
tap the kid's fingers next to him, which is great. Um, but there's so many visual and auditory things we can enhance, and for most students, that'll more than bridge the gap. I feel.
Yes, I think so. I think so. So I want to come back to Teach Music Online. I would love to hear
Hmm.
how you found the membership. Was it through our
Yeah,
recent webinars?
I think. I mean, this is 20 March 2020, right? Like, I think all of us were just like, oh my goodness, and just like looking for anything that we could find, like resources, like, and like ideas and all that stuff. And so I'm part of a small Facebook group for Alaska independent music teachers, and another teacher in there. Um,
Is it Mark?
ha- yes, Mark. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He happened to already be a member, and I think just because I was connected to him through that group, and then he was connected to you guys. I don't know how the Facebook ad algorithms work or whatever,
Hmm.
but somehow I either saw an ad or I did a search and I found you guys. And I've been like checking you guys out and, like, tiptoeing around it and stuff. There's lots of stuff out there, and um, um, mostly I waited to dive in mostly just because, gosh, it was, I've just been working quite a bit, and
Yeah.
like, you're like, okay, I need to think for future, and I want to. Um, I talked to Anna when she helped onboard me,
Hmm.
and I was telling her one of my big goals is I'd like to. I'm really on the West Coast right now, and I'd like to spread more towards the East Coast so I can be teaching when my kids are in school. You know,
Yes.
I mean, you know how it is. Like, as a music teacher, I'm working till 9 p.m. And my kids are like all in bed already. So that's
Yeah.
that's a future goal.
Yes, to start shifting your schedule up if you can. Yeah, if you could find
Hmm.
East Coast students who are home, but you could start teaching at noon instead of 3 or.
Right, right, yeah, totally. And there's homeschool associate and all that stuff that's finding those students is great,
Yeah.
but just trying to be ahead um, of the of the curve, so to speak, and what happens with the market and my studio and all that stuff. So.
Yes. Well, I would love to hear because this is helpful to me. What kind of your first impressions of our membership were when you first joined and as you've been going through content or attending calls?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, gosh, who was it alluded to it? He's a super friendly guy, teaches piano,
Is it
used to live in
Richard
Florida.
Bosworth?
Yeah, Richard. That's right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know why his name escaped me, but um, so Richard, he mentioned, like, a lot of stuff you can learn if you're just gonna, like, super sleuth it out and spend hours, like hundreds of hours on Google, but to have the community that's connected to a consolidate, like, where it's all the information is consolidated and it's growing and it's adapting and it's being added to because of the community,
Hmm.
like, to be honest, my first experience with the Suzuki community was like, it was so welcoming, and everyone was, like, supportive and positive of each other, and I really loved that about that. Like, turns out there's pockets of different communities within that big community that aren't always like that, but that's also what attracted me to, as soon as I signed up for TMO, and and Anna was a big part of that too, because I got to meet her before, really diving in. And I don't know if I told you, but so it turns out, so now I don't live in Anchorage, Alaska anymore. I live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I hope that's okay to say on the
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah.
Um, and so we're talking about teaching on the West Coast, and she says she lives in Idaho, and I say, oh, you know my wife grew up here in Idaho, and we just moved here, and, like, oh, what's it? Oh, Coeur d'Alene. Well, it turns out, like a couple days later, I'm walking my kids into school, and there's Anna. So our kids go to the same, elementary school. That's crazy,
Oh, it
I
is
mean, it's totally a
that
small
that
world,
makes the world feel very small. It definitely does.
Yeah.
Like the first person who you meet, on a call is actually in your town.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love it.
it was great,
Cool. Well, I'm
And
happy that you felt that same sense of community inside there. I think that that's true. The combined experiences when you have hundreds of teachers experiencing different challenges with tech or with students or with methods or marketing, and then we bring them together. It's amazing the power of that. Like yesterday, we just had
right.
the question, or 2 days ago, how did you acquire your most recent students? And there's like 35 teachers in there sharing how they got their recent students and how it happened and where they marketed. And it's like that is really a priceless education to bring. And it's so niche as well because it's everybody that's just doing this online or mostly doing it online.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting because like when you have a community where um everyone that everyone works together and you kind of trust each other to kind of support each other in a way, like the whole tide rises, and like the experience for the students
Mm.
is much better. um and that's weird because sometimes I don't shouldn't say it's weird, it's sometimes it's a little bit of an outlier because a lot of experiences I've had teaching, outside of some of these good communities I've mentioned, um, like it can be kind of hostile or competitive or whatever,
Mm.
and so this is, yeah, it's nice, and it's nice not to feel alone either. I mean that's a big part of it. Is just you sit here and you stare at a computer screen for 6 or 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
and that can be pretty brutal.
Yes. It can be exhausting. And now you have other friends
Mm-hmm.
who do the same thing.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can kind of like air grievances and
Yeah.
frustrations and solutions, and just not by yourself. So that's
Yes.
that's a big part of it.
Well, I'd love to jump back over to Music Nest. I've been thinking
Oh, sure.
about how
Mhm.
you applied it to your studio where you have all these students. I would love to hear what kind of feedback you got from students when you switched over to this method of assignments.
Yeah. So feedback has been really overwhelmingly positive. You know, it's and I know I'm supposed to say that probably. Like if I'm pushing, like hey, check out our app. But no, seriously, it's been the kids have loved. Everyone's got a smartphone on them, or a tablet or a computer, and as much as you know. We're a little more accustomed to it as online teachers, but as much as educators are like, oh, I don't want you on the screen all the time. There's certain uses that are just so wonderful, and I think I'm gonna maybe I can share an example since we
Yeah.
are doing the screen, and I know folks that um, saw the meeting earlier in the week already saw this, but this is oh, that's the teacher view. Hold on. Um, so this is the student view that I'm going to be pulling up, and it's just a like concise, quick heads up with notes, like card view of all the assignments or pieces that a student's working on. Right. So
Yeah.
students have liked that because they one click and I can see what my teacher expects of me,
Mm.
and I'm accountable to all these items. I mean, they're right there. Of course, you can have like you can have a notebook, but a notebook doesn't necessarily contain all the audio assets or videos or PDFs and things like that. So each of these cards expands so that you can slower speed up the playback, and then there's the PDFs or whatever,
Yes. Are that listening
resources.
audio that you have attached into that
Hmm.
card, is
Yeah.
it is it something you recorded or where are you getting that audio from?
Well, so I have done the work of recording all of the
The
audio that I
library.
send. Yes, and that is doable through the app. Like when you're using it, you can record it through whatever microphone you're using. In session, it's a little clunky to try to do that, so I do that all pre. But what I've asked teachers, anything that's being shared, you need to at very least do the diligence of making sure you've purchased every single bit of material, and then your students have as well.
Mm.
That's a big thing. Like copyright is a rat's nest, especially in today's day and age, especially for us online music teachers. The law is trying to adapt and
Mm-hmm.
try to watch out for uh, content producers, and also watch out for educators. Because we're not here to make money off of this stuff. You know,
Yeah.
and we want to do things the right way. So and when you first sign into it and use it, it has that banner that says, "Hey, you're responsible. You need to make sure
Yes.
not only as a um, the word escapes me, but you want to be a good
It,
example to your
yeah.
students,
Yeah.
but also just practically and legally, you need to make sure that you guys have both parties have purchased this, and this is just a medium through which you can access information, if that makes sense."
Yes. Oh, it totally makes sense. I mean, I think of, gosh, growing up and the struggle for a teacher who teaches like 40 kids in choir to get copies for all the students. But
Right.
my choral directors were such good examples of that. So when I started teaching piano, I always made sure my students had copies. And I think nowadays with a lot of digital content, either you can buy a studio license or they're pretty inexpensive. So I think teachers can
Mm-hmm.
avoid that maybe dilemma with a parent if they just explain it beforehand. Like you can
Right.
expect either you can pay that to me up front, like $50 at the beginning of the year, and I will buy their materials, or just expect to spend an additional X amount so that you're not like, oh, maybe I should just, it could be so easy to just send this photo over, be so much easier for them. Just avoid it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's important, you know, that we're stating that in particular, being explicit about it, because no one intends. Not many of us intend to do any harm, but it's also important that we're just diligent about it.
Oh, yeah. And I think also I'm just realizing it's setting a good example for your students as well,
Right.
because there's all kinds of ways to steal stuff online right now with how
Sure.
available things are.
Right. Yeah. And my sense, like just having worked in the technology, is that our legal system and the institutions that sell the content, and everybody in that whole equation, I think there's a massive shift happening, in the way that stuff is monitored, and the way that everything is made fair. And so I think it'll be a lot easier and clear to. I think there'll be clearer and easier avenues to go about that as we develop into the 21st century. Is my
Yes.
feeling.
Yeah, and there's some great resources. I'm thinking of the Alfred subscription where you can get access to more materials,
Mm-hmm.
or imslp.org, having
Mm-hmm.
access to public domain materials is an amazing resource as well for
Right.
teachers. So just having that integrity is a great way to set up your studio.
Right.
I am wondering if you can explain, we're probably going to have some listeners who haven't visually seen Music Nest and how it's laid out. But tell us
Yeah.
about, I think that the way you've organized cards is unique because I've looked at quite a few apps that also have a similar like lesson assignment system.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose to make it in cards versus just like line item assignments?
Well, I think mostly just because it's um, the the heads up appeal of just being able to look really quickly and understand, I have this many items. I have 7 items. And they're color coded so that I know the type of assignment that I'm working on. Some people don't find that necessary. I love it. And then the ability on the card to have additional information like the notes, um, and the types of resources that are attached to the card, and all that
Right.
stuff. It's meant to like give you the bit the I don't want to say best bang for your buck, but like in terms of energy and effort, you get the most out of just being able to glance at it really quick, and that's helpful. I hate to admit it, but I teach about 65 students a week, and I cannot always remember exactly where a student's at. Like
Oh,
I'm pretty good at it, but sometimes like one student gets kind of mixed up with another, and um, if I as soon as I open up their session, like I can go, oh, that's right, yeah, measure 10, we were having trouble with the fingering right there, and then it's an immediate reminder to me without, it just takes a second glance. And so that's why the cards are visually represented that way.
hmm.
It's also just because, as from the teacher view, we have a certain type of progress tracking built into this where and the colors I nerded out about this, like the colors get darker as it goes farther down, like
That's
I
really
have mine
cool.
set up so I've got preview, we're just barely looking at it, maybe just doing an exercise, working. These are current pieces that we're really diving into. Review, if I want to bring something back from old. And then mastered is not an open category, it's just you drag the card down. Like if I wanted to drag that into mastered, now it's disappeared, but I can open that back up and see what we all did if I need to, and so
Oh, it's
again,
so
that's
great.
quick visual reference to what's going on.
And I think you mentioned one of the reasons you wanted to create it was so that you could quickly create assignments during the lesson. Is that true? So that you're not having to spend time after the lesson putting notes in.
Right. Well, so any of these cards, I think this software works best if you've kind of thought about your teaching materials, like if you've really invested a lot of time organizing the library. Not all of us think like that, um, but having it all organized means it's just so quick to just tap and add real quick to the
Hmm.
session. Um, and but of course, it's like super important to be able to just add something new that you've never worked on, because of course that happens. Um, and so the way I have mine organized, if I was going to do that, I've got, you can see on the bottom here, I've got built in session file there. So I click on that, and then um, then I can write that. Sorry, I'm going to use my keyboard here. I don't know, twinkle, twinkle, um, little beatbox. I don't know, some weird, maybe new thing that we've created or whatever. So then I can add that, and then that gets automatically added to the library, and then I've got the card there too. And then if I want to
Awesome.
invest more time into it later, like, hey, I'm going to use this with lots of students, let's develop this, let's put some or other resources into it, then I can do that.
Okay. Okay. So cool. Well, tell teachers who are new to you and this product where they can find it,
Yeah.
and where they can get, yeah, download it and so that they can jump on after this, after they listen and check it out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So if I drop something in the chat, will that show up for people post
That
later
will
down the
not
line?
show up. You can just send me the links and I'll put them under the video or I'll put them in the show notes after.
Okay, yeah. Well, and so just so anyone that's just listening to this, the web address is app.musicnest, one word, .io.
Okay.
app.musicnest.io, and that's where
Okay.
you can just sign up for an account, and um, the instructions for starting everything up is there. And of course, I would love to help, especially anyone in our TMO community, but even outside of that, if folks are wanting help knowing how to organize, this is one on my to-do list, is to create YouTube videos for
Sure.
organizing your libraries in Music Nest. But in the meantime, if anyone wants any help, I'm happy to connect and maybe do a Zoom call or whatever. So
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'll put your email in the show notes and underneath the video and the link so that anyone that has questions, I don't want to bombard you with questions though. So hopefully they come on a steady flow because we just heard you have 60 plus students.
well, it's them. It's probably more my four kids that
Yeah.
make it harder. But
How
so
old are your
don't take it
kids?
personally if it takes a couple days for me to get back to you. So my kids, we have my oldest is almost 13. She's gonna be I'm gonna have a teenager,
Oh.
and then 11-year-old Lucy. So it's Pearl and then Lucy, and then my twins, Cody and Haven, are 6.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
So
So
fun. So did they just start kindergarten or are they in first grade?
They just started kindergarten, which actually allowed my wife to go back to grad school this year. So she's,
Really?
we are running a very tight ship these days.
Yes, you are. Gosh, yeah. That is a lot to manage. Wow. Well, that's so cool though that she can go back. What is she studying?
Speech language pathology.
Okay, cool.
And she's killing it, by the way. She got, well, never mind. I kind of want to brag on my wife, but that's not the purpose of the podcast.
No, I love it. I love it. That's really great. That's really great. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing all the information. And I
Yeah, you bet.
congrats on building such a thriving studio and being able to teach so many students online. I think those listening are always, reminded when they hear those stories because some of them aren't online at all yet. Or
Yeah.
maybe they
Hmm.
took some time off and they're like, should I go back online or should I go in person? And they're kind of in this limbo. And it gives them confidence to hear that you've been successful doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell you what, I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for the community that kind of supports all of us doing better and doing well. I think that's really
Yes.
important.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, thanks so much.